basically regard which information you already know and which one you prefer it. Also, we will cover the break and continue loops. What's the difference between them? So let's start with for loops. For basically, you use it if you know how many times you will repeat the statements. The syntax of for loop is in this way. You will write for, then you will open the parentheses and close it. Inside it, you will have 3 parameters. The first parameters will be the beginning of your counter. What will be the value of the counter that you will start the loop from? The second parameter, it will be the loop condition. When the loop entered, is there any conditions you want to be executed here? The third parameters is the increment of your counter, which is action after each iteration. How many times you want your counter to be increased? 1, 2, 3. Then you will have the curly brackets, and inside it you will have the body of your loop, which is containing the statements that to be repeated every time. The parameters between the syntax of for loop is actually a semicolon. So here you have to place a semicolon between each parameters. This is the URL of for loop. So we have here the initial action or the initial value of your counter. Then it will be test the condition. If it's evaluated to true, then it will execute the statement and increment the counter by the value you mention it in your syntax, then come back again to the beginning of the counter. We'll check the condition again. If it was evaluated to false, then it will exit from the for loop. This is an example. We define the counter as I, then we give it initial value 0, while I is less than 100, every time increase I by 1. So I plus plus will use the value of I, then will increment it by 1. System.out.println will come to Java, and this will be a solution regard if you want to print this message 100 times. So you will write this syntax. Repeat this block from I equal 0 to I equal 100. Every time add I by 1. What should you do? Java compiler, you have to print welcome to Java. So this will be the URL. Initial value to 0. Will test is I less than 100? Yes, then execute this statement, increment I by 1 back to the beginning of the loop. If we reach 100, this means the condition will be evaluated to false, will exit from the block. How we will trust the for loop? First, we define a variable I, so we will reserve a place in memory with the name I without any value inside it. Then we have the second statement here, for I equals 0, will hold the value 0 in the variable I. Then we have the condition is I less than 2, will test the value in the memory. Yes, it will evaluate it to true, then it will enter the statement here in the block. So system.out.println will be executed, so we will have welcome to Java on the screen. Then it will back to the beginning of the loop, and I will be incremented by 1, so I now equal to 1. I incremented, so I will be evaluated to 1. Then will test is I less than 2. I have 1 value. Yes, it's less than 2. So the statement will be printed system.out.println will come to Java, and this will be executed. يس.
بس هنا فوق ايش وظيفة اللي هي الاي دبل بلس؟
اي دبل بلس بتزيد للكاونتر بواحد، يعني عندك حسابة وبتبدي من الصفر. إذا كانت الحسابة ما وصلت للرقم 2 يعني الاي less than 2 بضغط عليها ضغطة واحدة، فبيستخدم الفاليو حقت اي الحالية وبعدين بيزيدها بواحد. بدينا بالزيرو، الصفر أقل من الاثنين بيطبع لي سيستم ويلكم تو جافا على الشاشة. ممتاز. بعدين زاد لي الاي بواحد، فصار الاي كان فيها زيرو صارت واحد. بيجي يتحقق مرة ثانية من الشرط، الواحد أقل من الاثنين ترو، بيطبع لي ويلكم تو جافا مرة ثانية، ويلكم تو جافا. بيزيد لي
دكتورة
بعد.
يعني أنا ما راح يطبعها بالاوت على طول انها زادت واحد، يعني الا لحتى ايش تكون اللي هي زي ما شرحتي لي قبل الاي الدبل بلس تكون قبل الاي عشان تطبعها بالاوت.
الاي هنا كاونتر، ما لها شغل بالطباعة، الطباعة راح تطبع بس المسج هذه. اي فهذه هنا عشان يبغى يمشي الاي على الزيرو ال1، لما يوصل ال2 بيوقف لأنه ما في هنا ايكوال بس 2، فلما يسويها يكررها مرتين من الزيرو وبعدين ال1 شاف 2 بيوقف، ما راح يطبعها لأكثر من مرتين.
اوكي
وصلت؟
وصلت، نعم شكرا.
Welcome. We will see an example. We will see an example now. Just to make sure إنه the idea already understood for the for loop. So here for I equals 0, I less than 2, I plus plus will increment 2 by I by 2. So the last value of I will be 2. We'll test the condition again. I is not less than 2, it's equal to 2, so he will not execute the statement here. So by the end, welcome to Java will be printed only 2 times. Let us do this exercise. Let's write a code for loop. Okay, so we will do the same example. We will define a loop with I equal to 0. Then we will start a loop for I, which is equal to 0, whereas I is less than 5. Every time increment I by 1 and do this statement. Okay, and I will delete this too. Every time I print the value of I plus I, for example. Print the value of I with I. Welcome to Java. So this is a string, so I'm supposed to put the quotations here. So tell me how many times welcome to Java will be printed by the end.
أتوقع السيمي كولون دكتورة في خطأ بالكود.
For I less than, not a statement.
Teacher, it must be I equals 0 first.
We already initialize I on the declaration. So for integer I equals 0, for I less than 5, I plus plus. There is something missing. Let us see the syntax in our presentation. For I equals 0, I less than 2, I plus plus, it's the same. Okay, so let us do it as the slide, and we will define only I here, and let us say I equals 0, semicolon here, and semicolon here.
Yes.
What's the difference if I say I there or I here? It's supposed to be accepted. So let us do it now this way. We need to test it now. So tell me, how many times welcome to Java will be printed at the end? You think?
5.
First, the counter will be 0. Then it will become 1. Then it will become 2. Then it will become 3. Then it will become 4. Then it will become 5. At 5 will be executed ولا لا؟
تنكتب 4 مرات، ما تنكتب 5. لأنه بتيجي عند 5 بتيجي عند 5 وبتوقف.
لا بتنكتب 5
So by the end, we are expecting it to become, what will be the last value of I?
4.
1.
But the message will be printed 5 times, from 0 to 4.
Because of I double plus.
Yes, because we already started, so we have the last value of I was equal to 4, but the message printed 5 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. This is only an increment to the counter. I plus plus means use the value of I, which is 0 at the beginning, here. Then, when you finish here, add 1 to I.
Yes.
Okay. So the last
دكتورة لو حطيت مثلا الاد بلس before I, for the I, what happened?
Before I,
Yes.
it will use the current value of I. No, it will add 1 to I. بعدين it will add 1 to I. Look here, the value of I was 0, صح? Before,
yes.
when the plus was behind I. Here it will add 1 to I, then it will use it, it will store it in I. So I was 0, I is less than 5, it will be the same output. You see? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 times. It will be the same, no different. You will see the difference if you are doing some mathematical operation. This is basically where is the difference between them. Any question regarding for loop? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, very good. Okay, so let us back to our meeting. We already have seen this example. Here is another example. Find the sum of the integers between 1 and 100. So we have list of numbers between 1 to 100, and we want to find the sum of them from 1 to 100. So this means 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 until we reach the 100. In this case, we need to define a variable to hold the sum at the end. We give it initial value to 0. Inside the loop, we define a counter. We will start it with 1. Our condition here that the number is less than or equal 100 because we want to include the 100 in the sum. Every time we will add 1 to the number to change the counter. What will be happen there? We will let sum equal the last value of sum with the current number. So by the end, we will print the value of sum, which is supposed to be 50/50. Let us do it on NetBeans. So here we define a sum variable, and we define integer num with initial value to 1. Our condition here is num supposed to be less than or equal 100, and what I wanted to do every time is to add 1 to the number. So num plus plus or num equal num plus 1, it's the same. What I wanted to do inside the loop is to let the old value of sum, which is 0 as initial value, equal the current value of sum plus the num variable. Outside the loop, I want to print the last value of sum. So system.out.println capital S here, println, and I wanted to print sum equal together with the value of sum at the end. To test the program, you have to press on run, and yes, we got the output of 50/50. So what's happened here? We start sum with 0, then for the first execution, it will become sum will equal 0 plus 1, which is equal to 1. For the second execution, first execution, for the second execution, sum will equal the last value of sum, which is 1, plus the current number of num, which is 2. So sum here will become 3. Okay, and this process will carry on until we reach the 100. Any question regarding this example?
Doctor?
Yes?
Wasn't it supposed to be 1 plus 1 equal 2? And the second statement you just wrote?
Yes, here. Here, it's supposed to be the last value of sum, which is here, 1. So 1 here come from the last execution of the iteration, which is 1, plus num, which is the current counter.
Supposed to be 1.
2. First was 1. This is the counter. Here is 1. I is the number value. So num here was 1. We start num from 1. Sum was 0. So 0 plus num, sum plus num, which is 0 plus 1, was equal to 1. In the second iteration, num was equal to 2. Sum will equal the last value of sum, which was 1, plus the current value of num, which is 2. So by the end here, sum will become 3. When num become 3, sum will have the value of old value of sum, which is 3, plus the current value of num, which is 3, and this will be 6.
Continuous هي السنتفك.
Yes, this statement will be repeated 100 times as my condition in the for loop. Is it clear now?
We will start in 0.
We will start with 1. My counter here start with 1.
Some because the value of sum is 0.
Yes, sum I started with 0 because I wanted to hold the sum of 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5. So rather than writing
the first
sum
the first step
equal,
we add 0 and 1.
the first step we will add 0
0
plus 1. Yes.
Yes.
So it have 1. It's like if you said let sum equal 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 till the 100. It's the same. But rather than repeating the operation more than 1, we define a counter. That one will be changed every time from 1 to 100, which is this number. And every time we will hold it to, we will make it hold the sum of 2 values together. So first it will become 1 plus 2. Then it will become
2.
The output plus 3, like this. Then it will become the 4 plus the output of 1 plus 2 plus 3. Is this clear?
Yes, it's clear.
Very good. Yeah. Okay. So let us carry on. Now we have another example to find the factorial of 10. Factorial of 10 is actually 1 multiply 2 multiply 3 multiply 4 until we reach 10. So multiply 10 is actually the multiplication of I from 1 to 10. To do this, we will define a variable. The same idea, but this time we will define a variable with the name factorial, which is having the value 1. Then we will have a loop for integers equal from 1, and our condition will be the number should be less than or equal to 10. Every time we need the number to increment by 1. What will happen here? The factorial will become the multiplication of the last 2 digits with the current value of num. So because the element that has no effect on any other value in multiplication operation is 1, so we will start with it. So here the first one will become 1 multiply 1 equal 1 will be stored in factorial. Then number will become 2, so this time 1 multiply 2 equal 2, and the previous value of factorial, which is 1. So by the end of the second operation here, or the iteration here, the value will become 2. This operation will be repeated until we reach the value 10. Do you want me to do it on NetBeans, or is it clear? It's actually the same, so it's fine. Let us do it. We will define, rather than sum, fractional factorial, sorry. So here, factorial equal to 1. This statement will be the same, but we need it till 10 only. So every time the factorial supposed to have the old value of factorial plus, no, multiply the current value of num. By the end, we want to print the value of the factorial equal factorial. Let's run the program and see the output. So this will be the output. It's the same if you write factorial equal 1 multiply 2 multiply 3 multiply 4 multiply 5 multiply 6 multiply 7 multiply 8 multiply 9 multiply 10. It will be the same things. All right. The second type of the loop in Java is while loop flowchart. The syntax of while loop here, while the condition here is correct between the parentheses, execute the body here. So here we have the beginning of the loop. Every time it will check the condition before it execute the statement. If the condition was evaluated to true, then the statement here will be executed. Otherwise, it will go back to the beginning of the loop and check the condition again. If the condition was evaluated to false, it will exit from the execution of the loop. This is an example. We have an integer counter with the name count. Initial value is 0. While the count is less than 100, print on the screen, welcome to Java. This is exactly the same program for the for loop, but the counter there, we already know the value it's supposed to be from 0 to 100. Here, my condition will be evaluated every time before the execution of the while loop is executed. So if the count is less than 100, the statement inside the loop will be executed. Otherwise, it will be break from the while loop. So this is the URL. We start the counter with 0. We get inside the condition. We evaluate it. It was true for the beginning. Then it will print on the screen, welcome to Java. Let us do it on NetBeans. So rather than having the for loop, we will have it the while loop. While, let's define the counter outside. We have integer I equal to 0. While I is less than 100 or equal 100, for example, system.out.println value of I, which is equal to I equal plus I. So the first I will become 0, the second one will become 2. It will be print the value of I every time from 1 to 100. So let us see. Oh, sorry, I didn't put the condition here. While I is less than or equal 100, yeah, I didn't change the value of I. So I will become always 0 until you change the value inside the loop. So you have here to put some condition to change the value of I. So let I incremented by 1 after execution. All right. So here we will have I printed 100 times. Okay. This is the trace of the while loop. So we will have the, for the first statement here, we will define a memory location with count name and give it the initial value 0. So this will be the memory location with 0 as a start value. The second statement here, it will check the condition here. If the value stored in I is less than 2, so this will become evaluated to true. The body of while loop will be executed. So welcome to Java will be printed on the screen here. Then the counter will, the fourth statement will be executed. The counter will be incremented by 1. So the value of count will change to 1. Then it will back to the beginning of while loop, will check is my condition still true. 1 is less than 2, evaluated to true, then it will become, execute the second statement here, welcome to Java. Then will an increment count by 1, so by the end here count will have the value 2. We'll check the value or the condition here, 2 is less than 2 is evaluated to false, so it will break from the body of while loop and not execute this structure. By the end, welcome to Java will be printed only 2 times.
الكاونت double plus already add 1.
Yes. Yes, this is why it's break the loop. هو زاد 1 يعني الآن الكاونت فيها 1. الكاونت فيها last value فيها 1 كانت. فلما جاء للواحد، الواحد أقل من الاثنين، صحيح نفذ لي الستيتمنت هذه. زاد آخر شيء هنا كاونت بلس بلس، فغير لي الفاليو حقت كاونت من الواحد زادها بواحد فصارت 2. رجع لي بداية الوايل لوب.
يعني
شاف
عملية مستمرة هي صح؟
العملية مستمرة، شاف الاثنين ما هي أقل من الاثنين مساوية لها، فما بيدخل في البادي حق اللوب، بيطلع. فخلاص آخر فاليو في الكاونت راح تكون 2. البادي حق اللوب راح يتكرر مرتين.
يعني هنا طبع الزيرو وطبع ال1 فقط.
0 وال1 فقط مرتين، لكن آخر فاليو في الكاونت كم كانت؟
2.
2.
It's not less than 2.
Sorry?
أقول 2 هي not it's not less than 2. It's equal. It's wrong. False يعني.
Yes, yes. It will evaluate the condition here, the Boolean condition here.
Yes.
Either true or false. 2 is not less than 2. It's evaluated to false, so it will not go inside the body of the loop.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Here we have an example. A class of 10 students took a quiz. The grades integer and range 0 to 100 for this quiz are available to you. Determine the class average on the quiz. So we have grades for student 10 integer. The grades will be from 0 to 100. Okay. And we need to determine the average of the grades in the class. The class average is equal to the sum of the grades divided by the number of the students. So we have, for example, our course M105, and we want to enter the grades of first quiz. We want to calculate the average. To calculate the average, we need to have the sum of the total grades, and also we need to know how many students already taken the quiz. This is the BST-code algorithms to solve the problem. First, we will set the total to 0. Then we will set a grades counter to 1. We will have a while loop. While grade counter is less than or equal to 10, we will have this body. We will prompt the user to enter the next grade. Then we will input the next grade. We will add the grades into the total. Then we will add 1 to the grade counter. Then we will set the class average to total divided by 10. Then we will print it on the screen, the average. If we want to translate this to code on Java, we just need to translate it to variables, and this is how we will do it. So I will have them both on the same screen. Too easy my job. Okay, so first, I don't need all this. Set total to 0. Here I need to define a variable integer with the name total. Give it initial value 0. Set grade counter to 1. So here also I need to define set grade counter to 1 with while integer counter equal 0. Then my condition is while counter is less than or equal to 10, which is here, while grade counter is less than or equal to 10, while counter is less than or equal to 10, counter. Okay, we will enter this block. First, prompt the user to enter the next grade. So here we have, as we have here to prompt the user to enter the grade, then we need to send a message to him on the screen. System.out.println enter a grade. Enter a grade. Are you with me? Okay. To hold the value from the user, we need to define also integer value or float value. I will put integer because it said there from 0 to 100. So integer grade to hold the value from the user. Then I need also to define a scanner to hold the input from the user. Scanner inputs equal new scanner system.n. This is how we define an input from the user. Then inside the program, we need to say, let the value of the grade variable equal the input from the user, but accept it as next integer. This is the value. So the user will enter a value. We will interpret it as integer value and store it inside the grade variable. Input the next grade. So the user will enter it from here. Grade equal input.next integer. Then add the grade into the total. So by the end here, add the grade into the total. So here we already have initial value to total. So here, let total equal the current value of total plus the current value of the grade. Add 1 to the grade counter. It's like if we say, let counter plus plus. Add 1 to the counter. This is supposed to be inside the body of while loop. So here we already will have the total of the grades entered by the user 10 times. Outside the body of the loop, set the class average to the total divided by 10. So here also we need to define a variable of float this time. It should be float value because it's average. Average. Okay. And the average variable will have the total divided by the last value of counter, or by 10, because already we know they are 10 students. It's the same. Either you said counter or you said 10. Print the class average. So here we will have system.out.println average equal plus the value of average. All right. Is this clear? Any question regarding the code here? Let's run the code and see the output. So we are expecting to enter a grade. I'll put a grade, for example, 20. Enter a grade 30. How many times I'm expecting to enter the grade?
10.
10 times. Very good. Thank you, because you let me feel that there are someone with me. And this is also 90, and this is 46, 60. So this is the end. By the end, it's calculated the average of the grades and printed on the screen. It will take the total and divide it by 10. It will become the same if you say total divided by the last value of counter.
What different if I add here, add one of counter, or if I don't add of counter?
If you don't add plus, you mean here in this statement, average equal total divided by counter.
Yes.
If you said counter, it will use the value of the variable counter. So the last value here of the counter was equal to 10. If you said initial value of the counter to 1, for example,
Total
and you said here counter is less than 10,
yes.
the counter here will have wrong value, because the last value of the counter will become 9. So it will use the last value inside the counter variable. If you want to use the 10 as a value for the counter, you have to say here less than or equal. So it's basically, do you want to use the value of the variable, or you want to make it a fixed value as 10? Got it?
Maybe.
Here, because in the question, we already know how many students we already have, because they mentioned here, we will have 10 students. So to calculate the average of 10 students, you either will divide it by 10 from the question, or if you don't know how many students you have, then you will use a counter. For example, you will say, you will see this in the next example. We have example, maybe it will bring it more clearer.
Okay.
Okay, so just bear with me. Okay, so this is actually the same things we did here with explanation of the code. It's already 5 o'clock now, so let us have a break. Come back here by 5:15. 5:15 is fine. Okay, so I have 15 minutes as a break. See you later. Welcome back. We will continue. We're still in while loop, and this was our last example. We define total and grade variable and average as double. We want the user to enter 10 grades and calculate the total of these grades, then print the average of these grades. So we initial the variable of the counter with 1. My condition is the counter is less than or equal to 10 every time the counter will be in increment by 1. Then we will ask the user to enter grade, store it inside the grade variable, and print it on the screen. This step, average equal double, total by 10, to convert the output to double before store it inside average. So we are cascading, casting the variable, the value before we store it in the variable.
طيب دكتور اقدر احول هي من البدايه، ما احتاج اني احول اللي هي الكونفرت الدبل من الاول، من البدايه احطها الدبل يصير صح؟
The total you mean? Yes, you can. You can define it.
يعني هنا هذه خطوه زياده انه احولها
Yes, it's okay. Yes, because here the average might be decimal number. So rather than losing some data, to cast the value of total before to double before store it inside average. Okay. So then the output will be asking the user 10 times to enter a grade. Then we will print the total grade and its average. Centennial controlled repetition. Develop a class averaging program that processes grades for an arbitrary number of students. This is for your classmate question. What if we didn't put 10 and we put some variable? Here, for example, we don't know the number of students that we will enter the grades of them. In this case, the value of the counter will be changed every time and incremented by 1 in the while loop. But we have to put some value called the Centennial controlled repetition to break the loop. So this value is often called indefinite repetition because the number of repetition is not known before the loop begins executing. So we don't know how many times we will repeat the block of the loop. But we should to set a value to break out the loop. Usually this is called a signal value or a dummy value or a flag value. We use it to end the data entry. In this case, we need to use the value of the counter, not the constant number 10, for example. So a Centennial value must be chosen that cannot be confused with an acceptable input value. This is an example. We will initial total to 0. We will initial counter to 0. Then we will prompt the user to enter the first grade. We will put it, possibly the Centennial value. While the user has not yet entered the Centennial, add this grade into the running total, add 1 to the grade counter, prompt the user to enter the next grade, input the next grade, possibly the Centennial. Then we will do a check. If the counter is not equal to 0, then there is some grades inside the in the programs. In the total, we have total in the we have set of totals. Else we should say no grades were entered. So this program is actually containing the selection if else, and also containing the while loop, but with Centennial value. If you want to convert this to a code, let us do it on NetBeans. So here, initial total to 0. We already initialize it. Initial counter to 0. So here we will initial counter to 0. Prompt the user to enter the first grade. And notice here the sentence, the instruction should be outside the loop. We didn't enter the loop yet. So before here, after this two sentence, prompt the user to enter the first grade. So it's like we need to define the scanner. And also the first grade. So we need also to define the grade. Okay. Then we should ask the user to enter a grade. Then system.out.println, enter a grade and assign the value entered by the user to the grade variables as next integer. Okay, so here input the first grade, possibly the Centennial. So this will be the Centennial. Then, while the user has not yet entered the Centennial, so here, while grade, so here my condition will be changed. While grade not equal 0, for example, or -1. So if the user entered -1, the loop will be stop executing. Here we need to change the structure of the sentence because we already have entered a grade. So we will check the value inside the grade before entering the loop. What will happen here? If the grade is not equal to -1, let total equal, add this grade into the running total. So total equal total plus grade. Add 1 to the grade counter. Counter equal plus. Add 1. Prompt the user to enter the next grade. So after doing this, we need also to change the value of a grade by asking the user to enter a grade again. So this need to be copied inside the loop body. Okay. Input the next grade, possibly the Centennial. So if the user entered -1, the body of the loop will go at the beginning and will check the value in the grade. If it is equal to -1, this will not be executed. By the end, we need to check if there is a total value or not by mentioning this sentence. If counter is not equal to 0, not equal 0, this means we have some value. Set the average to the total divided by the counter. So let average equal total divided by the counter. So this is the difference. If we store a constant variable or not. Else, print the average. So also we need to print the average here. In this case, we need to open curly bracket and close it. So this block will be executed in case f was evaluated to true. In case if was evaluated to false, else block will be executed, and in this case, system.out.println no grades were entered. And semicolon at the end to end the statement. Let's compile our program. Now we are expecting to enter a grade, so I will put 5 and I will put another grade 7. The counter will ask me to enter a grade until I type -1. Then it will stop asking me for a grade. This was my condition. Then the average will be executed. So the average was 7. Any question regarding this example? New messages. We can as well state system.out.println enter grade for a student plus counter. Plus counter. Yes, you can. To remind us which grade to enter. Yes, you can. You can do this. The message you want to print it to the user is up to you. To make it clear, to know which iteration of the counter you are in. Very good. So this is the same code. We already written it on NetBeans. If you need to have some input on the screen from the user, you have to import the scanner class. Then we define 3 variables: integer, total, grade counter, and grades. Total to hold the sum. Grade counter is to count how many students, in this case, later to divide it on the average statement. Grade is the value entered by the user. Average here will be the output, so we needed to divide the total on the grade counter. Any question regarding this code? So here in the division, to calculate the average, you see here we divide it on a variable, not on a fixed number, not on a constant. This was the difference, because here we didn't know how many students we already will enter their grades, but in the first case we already know they are 10. This was a simple running of the program. You can try it later by yourself. Program logic for Centennial controlled repetition. If you want to see the difference here between while the condition is true, do this, or while the Centennial value is not true, do this. In the first case, we have a condition. We already know the condition to break the loop. In the second case, we don't know the conditions, but we know the value to break out the loop. So for Centennial controlled repetition, you have to read the first value before reaching the while. And this is where you have to do it outside the body of while loop. And you have to read it also before entering the while loop. So this value determines whether the program flow of control should enter the body of the while. If the condition of whiles is false, the user entered the Centennial value. So the body of the while does not execute. Don't forget, one of the common mistakes with while and do while is to change the condition. Like here, we forget to, for example, to change the value of counter. In this case, the condition will be always evaluated to true, and this will cause infinite loop. Okay, So if the condition is true, the body begins executing and process the input. Then the loop body inputs the next value from the user before the end of the loop. So as you see, we asked the user to enter the grade before the loop and inside the loop to change the counter. We have here another example. Write a program that processes grades for 10 students and calculate the highest grade. So we will enter grades for 10 students, and we want to know the maximum or the highest grade among the 10 students. First, assume that we have only 3 students, so we will have grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. And we will define a value maximum. We will assign the value -1 as initial value. We will ask the user to enter a grade. We will start inside the grade 1. We will do some check if the value of the grade 1 entered by the user is higher than -1, which is stored in the maximum as initial value. This means maximum value needs to be replaced with grade 1. So you will say max equal grade 1 if grade 1 was higher than -1. Then we will ask again to enter a new grade and check if grade 2 was higher than maximum, then also change the value of maximum with the value of grade 2. So we are repeating the same things. This is the normal way if we have 3 students. We will ask again the user to enter a grade and check if the values entered by the user is highest than maximum, then the value of maximum needs also to be changed with the value of the grades. By the end, we will print on the screen the highest grade is equal to the maximum. Now we have 10 students. So you can say for loop is enough to execute this question or answer this question. And this is what's happened here. For counter equal 1, while the counter is less than or equal 10, which is the number of the entered grade, every time add counter by 1 or increment counter by 1. Enter a grade, store the value in the grade, check if grade is greater than maximum, then swap the value. Let max equal the grade, and for. Before the for loop here, you have to initial maximum with -1 and define the grade entered by the user. When you finish the for loop, print on the screen the highest grade is maximum. So we will enter a grade 10 times, then every time we will check which is the highest grade. The first value was 80. So maximum will has 80. The second one was 75. 75 is less than 80, so maximum value will not change. The third value was 65. 65 is less than 80, so maximum value will not change. The fourth value was 85. 85 is higher than 80, then it will change. Maximum will hold the value 85. So this is where we check the value as entered by the user with the current value of maximum. Any question regarding this question? Very good. Now we will go to do while loop. In this case, do the statement inside the curly bracket while my condition is true, then semicolon. The URL drawing for this do while syntax, the flow of the program will reach the body of do, then it will be executed, then it will check the condition. If it's true, we'll back again to the executing of the loop. If it's false, it will continue executing the rest of the statements. So here we are expecting to execute the body of the loop at least 1. The do while repetition statement tests the condition after executing the loop body. So it will be always executed at least once. The body always executes at least once. When a do while statement terminates, execution continue with the next statement in sequence. Brackets are not required in do while repetition statement if there is only one statement in the body, but if there are more than one, then we should put the curly bracket. Here, if the loop continuation condition in a for loop is omitted, so we don't have here any condition, it's implicitly true. By default, the condition here will be always evaluated to true. It's like if you said while true do something, and this will be causing infinite loop until you change the value to false. And how you will change the value if there is no variable to hold it. So it's better to use the equivalent loop in B to avoid confusion, which is the same. Adding a semicolon at the end of the for clause before the loop body is a common mistake, which is placing the semicolon here before the body of the loop, and this will cause logic error. So be careful of this. But here we define the same things here. While I less than 10, then if you place the semicolon here, this will cause a logic error. It will tell you you have a body here, but it doesn't relate it to any place. So it will show you a logic error. In the case of the do loop, the following semicolon is needed to end the loop, which is at the end of the condition after while. So you have to place here a semicolon. Do, you will open the curly bracket, then you will end every statement with a semicolon inside the body of the loop. Then also, if you write while the condition is true, you have to place a semicolon to execute the do while loop. Which loop to use? The three forms of loop statement, while, do while, and for, are equivalent. You can write the loop by using any one of them. Use the one that is most intuitive and comfortable for you. You will not be anyone in your program unless it's mentioned in the question. In general, a for loop may be used if you know the number of repetition. While loop, use it if you know the condition of breaking the loop. And do while if you want the loop to be executed at least once before testing the condition. We have the break statement. The break statement will execute in while, for, and do while or switch course immediate exit from that statement. So if you are inside the loop and in the middle of the instruction there was a break statement, then the program will stop executing where a break was found and it will not carry on executing the program. Execution continue with the first statement after the control statement, but when it's reached break, it will skip the remainder of the program. The opposite is continue. If it was used with while, for, or do while, it will stop executing the rest of the loop body where continue was there, and would increment the counter of the loop by 1. So this is an example of using break and continue. Here we will have test break. We define a sum with 0. We define number with 0. One number is less than 20. Every time add 1 to number and let sum equal the last value of sum plus the number. if the value is stored inside sum is bigger than or equal 100, break. This means stop entering inside the loop. Break. Exit from the loop. So it will carry on from here. System.out.println, the number is, and the system.out.println, the sum is equal sum. All right. And continue, what will happen here? We have the same example, but rather than break, we have continue. So in this case, if the number was equal to 10 or the number was equal to 11, this statement, which is inside the block of the body, will not be executed. And the while loop incremented will be tested again. So it will check the value of the number. Is it this less than 20? It will come inside. Okay. By the end, it will print the sum of sum is equal to the value. So if it's found break, it will go out of the body of the loop and carry on the statements of the program. If it's continue, then it will skip the rest of the statements in the block of the loop and go back to the beginning of the program. A nested loop is actually loop inside a loop. The outer loop is the one outside. The inner loop is the one inside. For example, if you want to calculate the multiplication table application, we need to print the multiplication table of the numbers between 1 to 100. How can we do it? We could define inner loop and we could define outer loop. If we want, for example, to calculate the one multiplication table, we will define a j with 1, while j is less than 10 every time j plus plus, print 1 j, which is from 1 to 10. What is the multiplication between them? So it will be printed in this way. 1 multiply 1, which is the value of j, then 1 multiply j. So the first execution will be 1, 2, 3 until 10. If we want to do it from 1 to 10, this means we need to do it 2 loops inside each other's. The first one is the value will be as a first parameter in the multiplication operation, 1 for the table 1, then 2 for table 2, then 10 for table 10. The second iteration is the second parameters here, which is 1 to 10 inside each table. So every time what will happen here, rather than 1 multiply 10, we will do it I multiply j inside the inner loop and the outer loop. The same things if you want to do it with triangle of asterisk, you need to define 2 loops. Then you will print the star. So here, let us do this example. Okay. So we will print a hierarchical astrophic. We will define 2 counters inside each other's. For integer I equals 0, while I is less than 100, every time let I incremented by 1. Inside it, for integer j equal 0, j is less than 100, every time increment j with 1. What I wanted to do is actually system dot out dot println astrophy. Let me check. Not a println, it's supposed to be print, because println will cause it to be print 100 times every time on a separate line, and I don't want this one. I want it to be printed on one line every time. So let's start I with 1 also, and j with 1. Let us check.
One here, not I double plus, not 1 double plus.
Yes, you are right. I plus plus. So let us check our code. It's not good because we need system.out.println after println after the first or each line. So we need this one here. Let's see now. What is my output? Let me check. What did I mistake? System level println. Okay, so it's the same.
teacher ما حددت الأقواس حقت 4.
الأقواس حقت 4. No need, because it's only one statement inside each other. You think so? Let me check here. Yeah, maybe yes, you are right. So here for integer, we need the curly bracket علشان we enclosed this for I, and this supposed to be for j, which is one sentence. No need. So now let's see. I don't know, what did I mistake? It's printed.
جرب تحط اللي هي البرنتلين system dot out dot println and اللي هي المultiply، واللي تحت عكسيهم يعني system dot print just print the last one.
dot print هذه حق الستار بتكون حق الجي، فأول مرة الجي بيكوال 1 وبيواصل إلين 100، فبيطبعها 100 مرة.
100 مرة واحد.
I هنا وهنا من الزيرو j بلس بلس كذا. اوكي، لأن هي الكونديشن كل مرة قاعدة تكرر نفسها. ف شايفين هنا نقص. You see here it's less. So from 0 to 100, let us reduce the values and see here. It's this one because it's 100 value. Now when I reduce the value, first I was 0, will j 1, print a star. Then I become 1, we j equal 1, so it will print 2 times. And it will carry on until it's reached the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 لأن the last value here will become 6. All right, I think there is a mistake بس إن this is the idea يعني. There is a mistake.
المفروض تكون 6 صح؟
Yes, 1 2 3 4 5. There is a mistake بس يعني the idea the same things. You can check the code later يعني. It's the same idea here. You can try it and see. So here, for example, we have 7 with equal. So I will become 7. So the j here will be always also equal to 7 by the end. The j here. Okay, so you can check later the code. It's the same idea. Here we need, for an example, the last example in today's class is finding the greatest common divisor. We need to find the value that is divisible by set of values. So suppose you have two integers, 4 and 2. The greatest common divisor is 2. 4 multiplied 2 is 2 and 2 multiplied 2 is 1. So both of them have 2 in common as the greatest common divisor. Suppose you enter two integers, 16 and 24. The greatest common divisor is 8 because 6 divided by 8 is 2 and 24 by 8 is 3. So how do you find the greatest common divisor? How we could solve this problem? Let us see the code. I don't want to open it. We will ask the user to enter the first grade and ask him to enter the second grade, store the values inside N1 and N2. Then we will define the greatest common divisor with the value 1 and we will divide k equal 2. While k, which is 2, we will move in from k equal 2 until the k is less than the second number. Okay, so while k is less than the first number and the second number, check if the remind value of the division of the first number on k is equal to 0 or the and also the remainder of the division of the second number on k is also equal to 0. If so, this means we already reached the GCD and store the value k inside it. So this is the idea of the common divider. I think that's all for today. Let me just check. Yes, there is one more example is the prime number. Write a program that reads from the user an integer number and check and print if the entered number is a prime or not. An integer greater than 1 is a prime if its only positive divisor is 1 or itself. For example, 2, 3, 5, and 7 are prime numbers because they can be divided on themselves and 1 only. But 4, 6, 8, and 9, they are not. So you will check also, you will have a variable, Boolean is a prime with the value true. If the divisor remainder with the number is equal to 0, this means prime is false and break. Otherwise, you will print on the screen is a prime number and or it is not a prime number. We finished today's class. Thank you very much for attending. The next quiz, some of you asking about the next quiz. The next quiz already they're published on the LMS, so you can go and check there. So supposed to be meeting 3. It's not announced yet. Be ready for it. I think it will become يعني very soon, maybe this weekend. Just be ready for the quiz. Is there a makeup quiz in the end? I don't think so, because it's already mentioned here. It will be only 5 quizzes. So I don't think it will become, there is a makeup class. And each one is 6 marks. So 6 multiplied 5 is 30. The same as the midterm grade. So I don't think there will be a makeup class. Or sorry, a makeup quiz. All right. Any question? Okay, so if there is no question, you are free to go. Thank you very much for attending today's session.
طيب يا
Thank
دكتورة
you.
بتنصحينا بالواجب نزل تنصحينا بإشي يعني تحطينا مثلا يعني كومنت على إشي إذا بدك أنت يعني بدك نسوي إشي بالواجب بدك إياه غير المكتوب المطلوب.
أنا والله did they publish the TMA حقهم؟ حطوه؟ Okay, so let's see it. Okay, so here this TMA deals with a mathematical geometry project. You must submit your source file well commented in Java project. Okay. You must submit a single Word file containing, so you have to submit the Java file, also Word file, including a copy and paste of the code, and also a snapshot of the running of the programs. If your code does not completely work, attach some description to explain the status of the code and the run. So you have to include explanation. You have 2 submission links on your LMS page. The regular submission link to upload a zipped folder of your Java. So you will upload first a folder containing a folder is compressed as zip, and also you have to upload it. The regular submission link to upload the Word file. So you will upload 2 files, one zip file, the other one is Word file. So far so clear. أشرح بالعربي. راح ترفقوا ملفين. الملف الأول مضغوط زب فايل وفي لينك بتحطوا فيه، والثاني بيكون ملف وورد. المضغوط بيكون في كل ملفات الأكواد الجافا فايل وملف الوورد، وكذلك لازم يكون في عندنا صور من البروجرام الرننج حقها. طبعا هذا بيكون داخل الوورد فايل محطوط لكم exactly ايش اللي المفروض تحطوا فيه. Your team A will not be marked if not all the required files are submitted on both submission links. لازم ترفعوا الملف في الاثنين. Any answers out of the TMA material meeting 1, 2, 3 and 4 will not be considered. فلازم يغطي الميتينج 1 و2 3 4. احنا اليوم ميتينج 4، فمعناها ان احنا جاهزين نقعد نشتغل على التيم A. Don't waste the time. A student will be penalized if he or she get external support. فbe careful على البلغاريزمز because last term I will tell you from my experience last term. Last term the students, for example, answered the full TMA. She got a 20. When we upload the similarity percentage, it's deduct the grades till 95% from their grades. يعني من أصل 20 they got 5. or they got 2.5 على حسب ال similarity percentage.
طيب إذا كانت يا دكتورة مثلا واجب مثلا متشابهة مع شخص آخر مثلا، يعني شيء طبيعي يكون متشابه لأنها كلها أكواد، ولا عادي؟
هي
لا.
لازم تكون اصلا اجابه واحده صح؟
لا مو لازم
أتوقع.
تكون إجابة. يعني ممكن حتى لو جانا لوب some students do it with 4 some students do it with the while some students يعني مستحيل بتكون 100% طبق الأصل من كل شيء.
الفاليو اللي
بس-
تختلف يعني صح؟
إيه بس ولو حتى في أنتم بترفعوه على الترنت N، فهو بيطلع السيميلاريتي بيرسنتج ما بين شغلك وشغل أحد ثاني. إذا كان 100% مطابق بيقول، إذا كان في نسبة شبه بيقول في النسبة. لكن إن اثنين طلاب يسلموا نفس الشغل exactly the same 100%، فهذا أكيد غش وبينقصوا.
مساعدة مو غش.
لا لا انتبهوا قلت لكم أنا حذرت، اللهم إني بلغت.
يعني
إنه في
فرق
طلاب
أقل.
جابوا 20 دخلنا نسبة السيميلاريتي انقلبت الدرجة من 20 صارت 5.
يعني هي عن نسبة التشابه وتنقص درجة؟
بتنقص، نعم بتنقص على حسب الجريد بوك. الجريد بوك إذا كانوا قايلين يعني على حسب نسبة التشابه زي ما قلنا. فطبعا لأن احنا زي ما قلت أكواد، ففي بتكون نسبة تشابه بس مستحيل تكون 100% نفسها. no way. يعني معقولة بيصيروا نفس أسماء الفاريبلز، معقولة بيصير نفس مكان الكيرلي براسكت، معقولة بيصير نفس الديكليريشن فيهم كلهم.
مكان
يعني
المكان مثلا الأقواس أنا أقدر مثلا من البرنامج على طول أحط فورمات تطلع دايركت على طول، هي عرفت شلون؟ يعني
انزين ما
في
عليك،
استخدام.
الواحد زميلك الثاني ضغط انتر، فمستحيل تكون اكزاكتلي ذا سيم، نفس المكان نفس الاسماء الفاريبلز نفس الفورمولا منها واليها، الا يكون يعني متساعدين مع بعض. ف انتبهوا، يعني هم بيحطوا في الجريد بوك نسبة التشابه كم وكم ينقص عليها الطالب، كم نحط له عليها من درجة، ففي الأخير بتنقص على حسب نسبة التشابه. أوكي، فبنكون منتبهين.
بعد التصحيح بنزلنا فيدباك وبنعرف صح إنه غلطنا
Yes.
مثلا بالجواب أو بالتشابه صح؟
يس بيبان. أوكي، هذه الكويستشنز طبعا ما أعتقد أن أنا بقراها الحين، خليها لوقت آخر. فاطلعوا عليها واقروها وخلونا نشوفها إن شاء الله الكلاس الجاي. أوكي،
شكرا لك دكتورة، ما قصرتي وأسفين على الإزعاج.
وبالتوفيق إن شاء الله.
بس أول مرة أشوف الأسئلة.
لا والله أنا زيك، يعني ما دريت أصلا إن التيم A نزل، فما رسلوا لنا إيميل وأنا ما دخلت، يعني تصفحت في LMS. بس أنتوا يعني حاولوا تكونوا يعني منتبهين، شكلهم لسه منزلينه مو من زمان يعني.
أيوة قبل أمس.
إيه يلا الآن إحنا خلصنا الميتينج 4 ويلا it's يعني your chance to look through it. Thank you very much. We have a nice day.
Thank you.